Sagittarius. It's time to stop running. What you've been avoiding is about to surface. Sagittarius, my love. You've spent so many years outrunning the things that quietly ache inside you. Not because you're careless. Not because you're weak. But because life has asked you to be so many things for so many people that your own truth has slowly slipped to the bottom of the priority list. There are evenings when you sit alone after tending to everyone else. Your children who still need your guidance, your aging parents who lean on your strength, the responsibilities that seem to multiply even as your energy thins. And in that stillness, something inside you whispers a truth you don't want to hear. A truth you gently hush with busyness, with optimism, with that brave Sagittarius smile that has carried you through so many storms. But lately, that truth isn't staying quiet anymore. You feel it rising inside you like a tide that refuses to retreat. A restlessness, a heaviness, a quiet knowing that something you've been avoiding, something deeply emotional, deeply personal, is beginning to surface. You've always run toward freedom, toward possibilities, toward horizons that promised expansion. But this time, the thing catching up to you isn't a burden meant to trap you. It's a lesson, a healing, a long-awaited turning point that your soul has outgrown the ability to postpone. This moment isn't here to punish you. It's here to liberate you. It's here to remind you that your fire, your truth, your inner North Star. They're not asking you to be stronger. They're asking you to be softer, to be honest, to stop running not because you are cornered, but because you are finally safe enough to face what hurts. And Sagittarius, you feel it, don't you? A quiet tremble beneath your bravery, a subtle shift in your chest, the sense that the universe is gently, but firmly, placing a mirror in front of you. What you've been avoiding is ready to be seen. And what's about to surface may be the very thing that sets you free. Chapter 1. The weight you've been carrying in silence. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that only Sagittarius women learn how to hide gracefully. It's the exhaustion that doesn't show in your smile, doesn't appear in your posture, doesn't reveal itself in your voice, yet lives quietly in the corners of your heart like a small bruise you've pressed down for far too long. You've always been known as the one who rises, the one who keeps moving forward, the one who finds a way to turn chaos into purpose. And because of that, people rarely ask if you're tired. They assume you're fine, always fine, because you're Sagittarius, the fire that never goes out. But even fire grows weary when it has been burning for decades without rest. There are nights when you sit on the edge of your bed after tending to everyone else's needs, and you feel a heaviness in your chest that no amount of optimism can fully wash away. You don't complain because you were raised to be resilient. You don't fall apart because people depend on your strength. You don't slow down because slowing down feels like inviting the truth to catch up to you. And you're not sure you're ready for that. Somewhere along the journey of taking care of children who are growing into their own lives, and parents whose lives are gently slowing down, and a home that needs holding together, you've begun to lose sight of your own emotional landscape. It's not your fault. Sagittarius love deeply, give freely, and carry quietly. But the weight you're carrying now, it's different. It isn't caused by one event or one person or one mistake. It's the accumulation of years of being strong, being responsible, being the one who handles it. And the truth is, something inside you is starting to crack open. Not in a destructive way, but in a revealing way. As if your soul is whispering, "My love, you've carried this long enough. You've spent so many years running from feelings you didn't have the space to process. Not because you wanted to escape, but because life demanded so much from you at once that you had no choice but to survive on momentum. You chose movement over introspection because standing still meant feeling everything. The disappointment you never admitted. The grief you tucked into quiet corners. The resentment that scared you because you didn't want it to define you. The loneliness that crept in even when your life was full of people. The guilt of wanting space, wanting breath, wanting something just for yourself. Sagittarius women often learn to carry their wounds like invisible backpacks. Always there, always heavy but never acknowledged. And with time, that weight doesn't just sit on your shoulders. It presses against your spirit. You know this weight. You felt it growing. You've been trying to outrun it with logic, busyness, humor, and hope, but it follows because it isn't a punishment. It's a message. Your inner world has been asking for your attention. Your emotions have been asking for their rightful place. Your truth has been asking to be honored. This chapter of your life isn't about being strong for others. It's about realizing how long you've postponed being strong for yourself. And Sagittarius, there's something beautiful happening beneath the weariness. Something brave. Something honest. Something that signals the beginning of your liberation. A part of you, the quiet, wise part, is finally ready to stop carrying this weight alone. This is where the journey begins. Not with running but with listening. Not with escape but with recognition. Not with more strength but with softness. And as you exhale into this truth, you'll feel the first shift, subtle but undeniable. The shift that leads us into the next chapter. The moment your inner wound begins to speak. Chapter 2. The truth behind your running. Your inner wound speaks. Sagittarius, there comes a moment in every woman's life, especially in the sacred years between 45 and 54, when the soul stops tolerating what the mind has been trying to outrun. You feel that moment arriving now, don't you? A soft trembling beneath your confidence. A gentle collapse inside old layers you once relied on. Something is speaking from within, and this time you can't silence it. Your inner wound, the one you've kept wrapped so tightly, is beginning to press against the walls of your strength. Not to break you but to reveal you. Because the truth is, what you've been running from all these years was never the world outside you. It was the world within you. For Sagittarius, the fear has never been chaos or hardship. You face those with remarkable courage. What terrifies you most is the possibility of being trapped. Trapped in a routine that drains your spirit. Trapped in responsibilities that never lighten. Trapped in a version of yourself that no longer feels true. And so you run. Not out of avoidance but out of self-preservation. Not because you are afraid of emotion but because emotion once felt too heavy to hold. Your inner wound formed during a time when you were forced to be stronger than your heart was ready to be. It could have been a moment when you were disappointed by someone you trusted. A season when you carried too much alone. A chapter where life demanded maturity before you had the space to process what you'd lost. Sagittarius women are masters at survival. Masters at keeping the horizon in sight even when the ground beneath them shakes. But survival has a price. It leaves some feelings unhealed, suspended in time, waiting for you to turn toward them with gentleness. And now, in the middle season of your life, when children are growing, parents are aging, and your identity is shifting, those unprocessed feelings finally have space to rise. This is why you felt that restlessness. Why you've been questioning things you once accepted. Why certain memories return without warning. Why certain emotions feel stronger than they should. Your soul has decided it's time. Time to stop storing pain in silent corners. Time to stop dressing your wounds with optimism alone. Time to stop using movement as your escape, when all it's ever wanted was your attention. But here's the deeper truth, the one Sagittarius rarely admits even to herself. You haven't been running from pain. You've been running from vulnerability. Vulnerability for you has always felt like losing control, and losing control feels like losing freedom. And freedom to Sagittarius isn't just a preference. It's oxygen. It is your essence, your lifeline, the place where your spirit expands and your faith deepens. So when life places you in roles where you must be responsible, steady, present, even when you're exhausted, it touches the most tender part of your wound, the fear of being consumed by duty, of disappearing into obligation, of losing yourself. This is why you hide your sadness behind humor. Why you power through exhaustion with determination. Why you answer "I'm okay" even when your heart aches. Not because you're trying to deceive anyone, but because you're trying to protect the part of you that still longs to be seen, understood, and held without being asked to be more. And yet, your inner wound is not rising to overwhelm you. It's rising to be freed. It's rising because you finally have the wisdom, the maturity, and the emotional strength that younger you didn't yet have. It's rising because you're no longer the woman who had to survive. You are the woman who can now heal. You're standing at a threshold, Sagittarius. Behind you is the lifetime you outgrew. Before you is the truth that scares you, but also the truth that will set you free. And as you exhale into that awareness, the next chapter begins to reveal itself. The moment when what you've avoided can no longer stay hidden. The moment when what's been rising quietly beneath your surface finally comes forward to be seen. Chapter 3: What's about to surface? The lesson your soul refuses to delay. There is a moment in every Sagittarius woman's life when the universe stops whispering and begins to speak in a tone you can no longer ignore. You've been feeling that shift, haven't you? as if something in your life, or inside your heart, has started stirring with a clarity that both unsettles you and strangely comforts you at the same time. This is the moment when what you've been avoiding rises to the surface. Not to corner you but to free you. Not to expose you but to reveal you. Not to take your freedom but to return it to you in a truer form. We often imagine Sagittarius as the seeker who runs toward the horizon, but what most people never understand is that you run not because you're irresponsible, but because your intuition is exquisitely sensitive. You sense energetic storms before they form. You feel when something is off long before others notice. And for years, you've sensed this inner confrontation building beneath the surface like a quiet earthquake. But now the ground is shifting, and the truth is emerging. And ready or not, something in your life is calling you to pause. It might come through an unexpected conversation, one that touches an old wound. It might come through a moment of overwhelming exhaustion, where your body refuses to keep up the pace. It might come through a relationship that suddenly demands a depth of honesty you're not used to offering. Or it might come in silence, that heavy, undeniable silence that asks, are you still living in alignment with your truth? Whatever form it takes, Sagittarius, one thing is certain. The confrontation you've postponed is now standing at your door. But here's the part most people miss. This isn't an attack. This is a divine intervention. A Jupiter-led awakening. Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, is the sign of expansion, wisdom, higher truth, and Jupiter refuses to let you live a life that is smaller, heavier, or more limited than your soul contracted for. When you avoid an emotional truth for too long, Jupiter doesn't punish you. Jupiter opens the path that forces you to rise. And right now, Jupiter is opening that path. For some Sagittarius women, what's surfacing is disappointment you never fully acknowledged. The kind that arises when you've been strong for everyone, but secretly hoped someone would be strong for you. For others, it is heartache you thought you healed, but that still lingers like a bruise when certain memories are touched. And for many, it is a spiritual emptiness, the quiet ache of realizing you've outgrown the version of yourself you've been performing for decades. But whichever truth belongs to you, one thing ties all Sag women together. You have arrived at a moment where your soul will not let you run anymore. Let's look deeper into what is surfacing for each group of Sagittarius. November 22nd to December 1st. You've been avoiding the truth that your expectations, especially the ones you've placed on yourself, have become too heavy. You've been carrying disappointment in silence, telling yourself to stay positive, even when your spirit needed space to grieve. What's surfacing now is the permission to feel what you never let yourself feel. December 2nd to December 11th. Your soul is bringing old emotional wounds to the surface, wounds tied to relationships that shape the way you trust, give, love, and protect yourself. These wounds were never resolved. They were only tucked away in the corners of your strength. Now they rise not to reopen pain, but to release you from its root. December 12th to December 21st. You've been avoiding your own power. Not because you don't have it, but because you fear what will happen if you fully claim it. Expectations, responsibility, visibility. These things have always stirred anxiety in you. But now your authentic power is calling you to step into a bigger life, not a heavier one. And yet, regardless of your birth window, every Sagittarius woman is facing the same spiritual question. Are you ready to stop running from the truth that your soul has outgrown the life you're currently living? This rising truth isn't here to break you. It's here to wake you. It's here to guide you back into alignment with your deepest emotional honesty. It's here to help you reclaim the freedom and fullness you've been seeking everywhere except within yourself. And as this truth continues to surface, there comes a turning point. A moment when you must choose between resisting the tide or allowing it to carry you into a new chapter of self-understanding. Because the next phase of your healing requires more than recognition. It requires courage. The kind of courage Sagittarius holds in her bones. And that takes us gently into the next chapter, where you learn how to walk through this fear, not around it. A chapter where your bravery is no longer about running toward horizons, but about returning to the horizon within yourself. Chapter 4, Walking Through the Fear. Your brave return to yourself. Sagittarius, there comes a time when courage is no longer measured by how far you can run, how much you can carry, or how brightly you can smile through uncertainty. There is a quieter, more intimate form of courage, one that feels like standing barefoot in your own truth. One that feels like allowing yourself to be seen without armor. One that feels like whispering, "This is where I am right now, and I don't need to pretend it's anything else." This is the courage life is asking of you now. You don't need to rush into it. You don't need to force anything open. You only need to allow yourself to stop long enough to feel what you've been avoiding for years. Because the fear you carry, the fear that has followed you through your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, has never been fear of the truth. You've always handled truth better than most. Your fear has simply been the possibility that if you stopped running, you might lose yourself and all the responsibilities waiting for you. But what you're discovering now is that the opposite is true. When you stop running, you don't lose yourself. You finally find the version of you that has been hidden beneath years of caregiving, decades of strength, and a lifetime of surviving. And this version of you, she is softer. She is braver. She is wiser. She is more sacred than anything you've been performing. Walking through the fear doesn't mean flooding yourself with emotion. It means letting your emotions exist without judgment. It means letting yourself cry when the tears rise, instead of swallowing them. It means admitting, even quietly, "I need help," without feeling like you've failed. Sagittarius vulnerability is unlike any other sign's vulnerability. It's not dramatic, not chaotic, not overwhelming. It's simple. It's real. It's tender. It's the moment a fire softens into a warm ember, still bright, still alive, but no longer burning itself out. And in these years of your life, vulnerability becomes more than an emotional expression. It becomes a form of spiritual freedom. Because for Sagittarius, freedom has never truly meant running away. Freedom has always meant expanding into the truth of who you really are. So when fear rises, fear of losing control, fear of being judged, fear of disappointing others, fear of collapsing under expectations, remind yourself of this. Fear is not a wall. It's a doorway. And when you walk through it with gentleness, you discover a deeper truth. The person you become on the other side is far more authentic than the version you worked so hard to maintain. You are learning to ask for support without guilt. You are learning to honor your limits without apology. You are learning to set boundaries not to keep people out but to keep your spirit intact. You are learning that pauses are sacred, and slowing down is not weakness, it is wisdom. And perhaps most beautifully, you are learning something Sagittarius women often forget. You don't need to be extraordinary to be loved. You just need to be real. There is a moment, a quiet, transformative moment, when you will realize that the freedom you've been chasing outside has always been waiting inside you. This moment comes when you allow yourself to breathe without performing, without fixing, without proving anything to anyone. It comes when you say softly and honestly, "I am enough, even when I am not strong." And in that moment the fear loosens. The weight lifts. The exhaustion softens. Because you are no longer walking through life as the woman who outruns her truth. You are walking as the woman who embraces it, who stands in it, who grows from it, who returns to herself through it. This is the beginning of your real freedom, Sagittarius. The freedom that doesn't depend on circumstances or other people, but rises from the center of your emotional honesty. And as this chapter gently closes, it leads you toward the final truth of this journey. A truth waiting to unfold in the healing conclusion. That what you've been avoiding all along wasn't here to break you. It was here to bring you home. Sagittarius, as we arrive at the end of this journey, I want you to pause, just for a moment, and feel the softness that is beginning to bloom inside you. It may be subtle, it may be quiet, but something in you has shifted. Something has exhaled. Something has recognized that what's been rising from within is not a threat to your freedom, but the very key to it. You have spent so many years being the strong one, the anchor, the optimism, the fire that kept everyone warm even when your own flame flickered. You have survived seasons that would have broken others. You have held entire worlds together while your own heart whispered for attention. And through all of it, you kept running not because you were lost but because you believed motion was the only way to stay alive. But now your soul is calling you to a different kind of life. A life where you no longer mistake stillness for weakness. A life where you no longer confuse responsibility with captivity. A life where you no longer carry the weight of everyone's needs at the cost of your own heart. Your soul is asking you to stand in your truth, gently, bravely, unapologetically. To let the woman behind the smile speak. To let the fire inside you burn in its natural rhythm. Not too bright, Not too controlled, just honest. What you've been avoiding is not an enemy. It has always been your reflection. The part of you longing to be witnessed, understood, and welcomed back into the wholeness of who you are. And now, after years of silence, this truth has finally surfaced. Not to punish you, but to free you from the cage you didn't realize you'd built for yourself. Sagittarius, you are not meant to be trapped. You are not meant to live half-truths or muted emotions. Your spirit was born for expansiveness, but not the kind found in constant movement. The expansiveness you're stepping into now is an inner horizon, a deeper freedom, a sacred spaciousness that comes when you stop running from your own heart. This is the liberation you've secretly craved. The liberation of being able to say, I'm tired without shame, to say, I need help without fear, to say, I can't carry this alone anymore without guilt. You deserve that softness. You deserve that safety. You deserve a life where you can be powerful and vulnerable at the same time, because that is where your true magic lives. And as you walk forward from this moment, I want you to carry a few truths with you. I am safe when I pause. My truth is not a burden. It is my compass. I choose honesty over avoidance. I deserve to return to myself. These are not just affirmations. They are invitations, guiding you out of the performance and back into the authenticity that Jupiter has been trying to bring you home to for years. Sagittarius, look at how far you've come. Look at the courage it took to read these words, to feel these truths, to allow your heart to open even just a little more. This is not the ending of a chapter. This is the opening of a new horizon. One that honors your spirit, your emotions, your humanity. And if these words touch something inside you, if they softened a place you've held tight, I invite you to share your experience, even just a sentence, because your vulnerability may become the permission another Sagittarius has been waiting for. And if you feel called, stay connected, subscribe, join our circle, return when your heart needs guidance. Not as a technical action, but as an energetic choice, a way of saying, I am ready to keep healing. I am ready to keep growing. Sagittarius, it's time to stop running. Not because you're cornered, not because you're failing, but because your soul has grown strong enough to meet the truth with open hands. And on the other side of that truth is the freedom you've been seeking your entire life. You are enough. You are whole. You are home.